Next speaker is a lady called Jane Piper, and Jane started her journey to becoming an entrepreneur just over a year ago when she founded Pipsy. Pipsy is a slightly quirky name, but brings together her last name and psychology, her area of study. She works with people and businesses, so companies get the best out of their people, and people get the best out of their company. Change, engagement, and development are common themes, whether at an individual level or at an organizational level. Jane will tell us that it has been many miles travelled, some interesting twists, turns, and a few bumps along the way. Ladies, please welcome Jane Piper.
Wow, what a hard act to follow. That's fantastic. Good to see you all up there sharing some energy. I'm here to tell you my story today. When we're children, a saying I often heard, especially because I was such a curious child, was to think first and then act. Because I was always out there getting into trouble, getting into danger, causing problems, because I would leap into things full of enthusiasm. But somehow, as I got a bit older, a few things changed, and I want to tell you about that journey. How I got stuck in a comfort zone. Or you could even say, stuck in a rut. Or stuck inside my head over analysing things, being too scared to change. I want to tell you about how I think I got out of that rut by being able to act first and then think. To tell you my story, we have to go 19,000 kilometres away from here, where it all started, in a tiny place called Pleasant Point. And the name says it all. You can see it's a point in the middle. So we're now in Pleasant Point. We're now in Pleasant Point, and it's a very pleasant place as well. So the name says it all. It was a very pleasant and safe place to grow up. And there were two things I learned growing up on the other side of the world in Pleasant Point. One was to give it a go. It was too small to have simply the best people in the orchestra, or simply the best people in the hockey team, or the soccer team, or Girl Guides, or Girl Scouts. So we did it all. They were always looking for enthusiastic and curious people like me. I played soccer, I played hockey, I was in the tennis team, I was in Girl Scouts, I was in orchestra, I was sung in the choir. I did it all. I wonder these days how I fitted it all in. For example, I learned to play the cello when I was 11 years old. Not because I even knew what a cello was, not because I had any musical talent, but there was a travelling music teacher who came to our school one day a week, and if they did not find 2 more students to take lessons, she would have cancelled. I'd love to stand up here and tell you that, now I'm a world famous cellist. Unfortunately, I lack some musical talent. But it did teach me something, that even with a moderate amount of talent and a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of practice, I was able to achieve some moderate success. And the second thing we learned was to make the best of it. There was no Space Invaders machines in Pleasant Point. There was no disco. There was not even a pub you could go to that your parents weren't going to be at. A trip to the cinema was a huge deal, especially before we had a driver's license. But we were out there making the best of it. It was safe enough. We were left a lot to our own devices, and apart from once potentially drowning ourselves or hanging ourselves on a rope that we'd set up for a swim, it was a relatively safe place to go. But it was small. This is my senior year. It's all of us. But we were dying to leave. The saying was, anybody with any get up and go has got up and gone. And we headed off 17 to the bright lights in the big city, full of curiosity. We were in hostels. There were 300 in my hostel. There were 4 adults supervising us, all 17, all hormone-filled, all out there, coming from country towns, wanting to see the rest of life. You can imagine we grew up quickly. Some of us got into some trouble, and we lost our naivety. And then after that, it felt like I finished university. Just a point, I studied psychology at university because I wanted to help people. Then after university, it was time to go and explore the world. The whole of New Zealand just felt like a huge, great, big village stuck way down on the South Pacific. And it was time to get out there and see the world. And it's quite a rite of passage in New Zealand. It's called your OE. You go and do a couple of years and then you go back and settle down. Because New Zealand is a great place to raise your family. So I headed off to Minneapolis, USA. And needless to say, it's not Pleasant Point. It definitely was not a point. There were 3 million people living in the Twin Cities at the time. There were 3.5 million people living in New Zealand. There was the world's largest shopping mall where I'd grown up in a town that had one corner shop. And it wasn't very pleasant, to be honest. Sorry to anybody that comes from there at that particular time. We shifted out of our first apartment because somebody got shot in the lobby when they were on a payphone and a drug dealer wanted to do a deal. Clearly the times before cell phones were widespread. It was difficult to work in the States without a work permit, but sometimes life is a bit like a movie, and there's one called Green Card. Mine wasn't quite that dramatic, but 5 minutes in the Hennepin County Courthouse, I had a husband, and 2 weeks later, a work permit. I'm slightly career-oriented. But then it was a bit of deja vu. I got a job with a big-name company, and I thought, yes, I went out there, and they said to me, oh, some of the temping staff don't like to work here because somebody got stabbed in the car park a few weeks ago. Ooh. So anyway, it wasn't Pleasant Point. Then we shifted with my new husband. He does feature for longer than 5 minutes. Trondheim, Norway, 63 degrees north. My advice, if you ever decide to shift somewhere which is way up north, do not do it in late September. Snow came on the 12th of October and lasted until May. And slowly the days get shorter and shorter until there are 2 hours of daylight in the middle of December. It's very depressing. But anyway, got out there, was skiing and had a lot of fun. But then after all that travelling around the world, it was time to do what life expected of me and go and settle down in New Zealand. And I did. I found a job and I thought I had it made. 18 months later, I was promoted to be the head of human resources of this company of 1,000 people. 3 months later, I was told, the owners have decided to sell and you have to make 800 of these people redundant, deal with some pretty tough unions, and then, by the way, make yourself redundant too. So the road was a wee bit bumpy, but anyway, we got on and we got down to settling down, mortgage, house, car, and then all of a sudden, the husband that I'd married in 5 minutes, he said, honey, I've got an offer for a job in Switzerland. Should we do it? And I was like, yes, we have to do it. And he was like, oh, we should think about it. He's an engineer. We should think about it first. We should plan, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yes, I want to be out there again. It all got a bit dull, he says. Yes, let's make this. And I encouraged him. We were off. And to be honest, it was a bit of a disaster when I first got here. I got an L permit. Any of you had an L permit? L permit stands for loser. L permit means that you can't work unless there is nobody in the entire European Union with your skills. Even though I thought I was somebody in New Zealand, it didn't seem to count on this side of the world. But I had one of those ones where you have the flash. I met this guy, and I'll never forget it. One, because he had a very unusual name. His name was Pontius, and I just thought that was a character from the Bible. He said, if you had all the time in the world, what would you rather do, study or work? I said, Short answer, study. So I enrolled in intensive German lessons. I started doing an MBA. I worked on getting the work permit, and finally it also was coming together. But I got out there and enjoyed as much as I could of Switzerland as well, because it's a long way away from New Zealand, as we've clearly established today. And it could take us a long time to get back and go skiing and sledding and hiking and meeting up with people who lived on this side of the world. So then I finally found a job, and got a work permit, and I grabbed the first job I could. And that was also a wee bit of a disaster, to be honest. They worked doing what's called clinical trials, which means they tested drugs on humans in countries too poor to say no. But, you know, I did learn something. There is a limit to how much you want to perhaps drive your career at times. But I then found another job, and again I thought, wow, I've got it made. And we were flying around the world, assessing these companies and deciding whether we'd buy them. It was all in the growth phase. I was clocking up frequent flyer miles. I was having a lot of fun. We were developing things. And then after about 5 or 6 years, along came the financial crisis. And all of a sudden it was back to these things we just bought, these companies, these people that we had been developing and integrating. It was back to closing offices and slashing and burning. But I stayed in that job even though I wasn't enjoying it. I stayed in that job because, well, 2 reasons really. One was to do the last 2 times I'd made a move, and I just leapt with my usual enthusiasm. It had been a wee bit of a disaster. So I was too cautious, I was too scared to make a move again. And second, to be honest, it came with a nice salary and lots of frequent travel miles and a few other perks that, you know, were a wee bit hard to give up. But suddenly it got to me, and I was exhausted, I was cynical, I was sick of the corporate world. I just couldn't understand these people that would buy a company one time and then be selling these, and it was more the people. And as I said, I'd gone into psychology because I wanted to deal with people, and I felt that I'd now got into jobs where I actually treated people quite badly. So I had in this mind that I wanted to start my own company. But when I wanted to start my own company, I had these 2 blocks. One was I should do it back in New Zealand because of these 2 reasons. One was I'm not fluent in German, and secondly, that, you know, there was a lot of systems I didn't understand. So I had these 2 blocks: don't start your company here. But this is where I think it was important, and we come back to that point, to start acting a little, just to taste it and just keep that curiosity. I went to a course and I met other women who were also keen on starting their business. I talked to other entrepreneurs and found that, well, some of them talked even worse German than I did. It is really possible. That they didn't really care less whether they didn't understand how Mehrwertsteuer worked or not. They just hired an accountant. And all of a sudden it didn't seem possible by talking to other people and getting out there and meeting them. And then as I started talking about it, I talked to an old boss of mine, and she said, if you do this, and I recommend you do, so she gave me the recommendation, I will give you a contract for the first 4 months. And then it was made. But what it took was that first little plunge and blocking those thoughts that were holding me back, and just putting your toe into the water and trying it. And so when I look back, there's not much which really has gone according to the plan. I haven't settled down in New Zealand. I haven't become a farmer's wife in New Zealand. And it could have all been easier to stay. But part of me is getting out there and exploring. But when I stopped, really life wasn't going in the direction I wanted. And I think I would explain it by one final little story here, which basically is about climbing over 43 mountain passes by bike. And you can say, well, that's a mad and strange goal to have achieved. And it is a mad and strange goal to achieve, but my point is I didn't do this by suddenly saying, I want to bike over 43 mountain passes in Switzerland. I was out there enjoying the sunshine, the scenery, and biking around, and I happened to bike over a mountain pass. I know you probably think that's a bit strange how you happen to bike over a mountain pass. There are a couple which are a bit lower. And then there was, well, we could do one of the high ones. Well, you know, yeah, my husband, being very logical, explained to me that, you know, if you get tired and you just really don't feel you can go up, you can turn your bike and point it down, and it doesn't take much effort. Which is a very, very good logical point. So we biked over the Clausen Pass, and I was very proudly telling a friend about it, and they said, you know, there's 43 mountain passes in Switzerland. Here's a list. You could do them all. Ha 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 ha. I said, you've got to be joking. Anyway, but it became became more of a joke, less of a joke and more of a reality. And after 5 seasons, we did bike over 43 mountain passes. And that's not to say that... And the point is not that I biked over 43 mountain passes. The point is it took that little bit of getting that courage up to do that first one and tasting it and trying that. And when you've had that little taste of something, you build the self-confidence and you believe that you could actually do it. And you could actually do 43, or you could actually start your company. So that's why I say to you that really sometimes it's really good to get out there and just try something in a little taste, meet other people who've had that success, feel it and see it just in a little dose. And then by acting, you will build the self-confidence, and then you can think you will do it. And when you can think you can do it, then you will do it.
Congratulations, Jane. I think we can all agree that outside of living about 19 different lives, Jane should be teaching deadpan delivery on Comedy Central. That was fantastic. Congratulations. Well done, Jane.